Na kojoj adresi će se održati razgovori? U Briselu ili Vašingtonu? U poslednjoj fazi dijaloga između Prištine i Beograda posrednici Evropska unija i Sjedinjene Američke Države imaju različite stavove. Iako diplomate tvrde da postoji koordinacija na osnovu izjava brojnih analitičara, bivših diplomata i stručnjaka po pitanju Balkana, moglo bi se reći da ne postoji nikakva koordinacija između Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i Evropske unije. Nepoverenje prema Evropskoj uniji pothranjuje se činjenicom da 5 država članica nije priznalo nezavisnost Kosova i da sam proces razgovora traje predugo, pa postoji povećan skepticizam da li će Brisel biti u stanju da dovede do finalnog sporazuma između Kosova i Srbije. Za nekoliko meseci tokom američkog posredovanja i bez susreta lidera za pregovaračkim stolom došlo je do potpisivanja 3 sporazuma. Planirana je i poseta u Beloj kući između predsjednika Kosova i premijera Srbije, ali je u međuvremenu otkazana. Ova inicijativa za sastanak u Beloj kući ukazuje da su Amerikanci usmerili punu pažnju ka postizanju sporazuma između Kosova i Srbije. Međutim, nekoordinisano angažovanje između Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i Evropske unije najviše će koštati građane Kosova i Srbije. Koja će biti adresa razgovora između Kosova i Srbije, ostaje da se vidi.
Each and every of the 6 Western Balkan states is about to become a European Union member if conditions will be fulfilled from both sides, but none of them will become a 51st or whatever state of the United States of America, even if I always try to strengthen the transatlantic relations, and I really appreciate the role the United States of America generally play on this planet. It's a European issue, and it will be negotiated and solved and come to a positive end and be finished positively in Europe. And that means in our common main city, our common capital, and that's Brussels.
Well, the Americans have been active in the region of the Western Balkan states in history and in the past, and they played a constructive role. But I think nobody should be mistaken that any political process in the normalization between Serbia and Kosovo, and on the other hand, also with regard to the EU accession process of each individual country, can only be led by the respective countries in combination with the European Union, because only the European Union can play a political role here, not the Americans, as much as they are active there. The Americans, the United States of America, are an important player in the region, and they do a lot of good things, but everybody should understand political process is can only be partnered with the European Union.
I see the European Union in the driver's seat, and for sure I do hope that we can not just facilitate the dialogue during the next months and weeks, but also, of course, finalize it within our, let's say, framework and our network. And I definitely see that the final agreement should be hopefully then signed in Brussels. I know this is the Brussels-based dialogue, but it should be aligned with the, let's say, capitals who have a vested interest in, let's say, a successful outcome of the dialogue as soon as possible. And since the German presidency is ahead of us, I guess it is in a very high interest of the German Foreign Office and the Chancellor to keep a very close contact to the region.
What's happening in Kosovo, Serbia is a priority for us here in Washington, priority for us at the Atlantic Council, me personally. So look, this is good. It's good because we are talking about forward movement in the region. We are faced with a relaunch of the dialogue process, and it's going to happen across the Atlantic in both Washington, but also in Europe as well. President Macron will host a summit in Paris. The EU is really in the driving seat for a lot of what's happening here, and the United States can play a catalyzing role. So for me, this is not an either or option. We get to a dialogue if there's real ownership and commitment in Prishtina and Belgrade, and if there's movement and willingness in the partnerships, the strategic partnerships that both countries need with Washington and Brussels. So it will be both.
Well, as far as we have all seen, there were different paths, especially during the last weeks and the month. That was mainly also caused by the, let's say, new commission. A new high representative took over from Mrs. Mogherini, and now there is an appointed special envoy, special representative for this dialogue, Mr. Miroslav Lajčák, who's very ambitious, very active, and very keen on running this dialogue. I guess he's a professional diplomat. He knows what he's doing. And so I could imagine that he's also trying to take up with the ideas coming from Washington. But so far it is, to be honest, not easy to speak with one voice, which we actually need to bring all the actors on the table and to get a precise and concise result for the dialogue as soon as possible. As long as there's someone who's just running for a quick result, it is very difficult to go along a line, but it will be in our interest, to get together everyone from the West, and hopefully we will then also coordinate our actions in the near future.
So look, I think we need to be honest that there is not as much coordination between the United States and the European Union as I would think would be most useful in ensuring an effective outcome. But I also think there is an exaggeration of no coordination or no conversation. And so I am aware of conversations between Washington and Berlin and Washington and Paris all about this. We ourselves at the Atlantic Council were just honored to host Miroslav Lajčák, who's playing a key role in all of this, for a strategy session with a lot of Americans just last week. So I think there's room for improvement in tightening the coordination between the US and the EU. We know at the end of the day that successful outcomes in this region are driven from the region with coordinated backing between the European Union and the United States. There's room to be desired on that front. But at the same time, these processes are quite mutually reinforcing. And I hope that people can look beyond sometimes the politics of it to determine what the EU can do to advance the process, what the United States can do to advance the process. And even if it's not fully together, that in a coordinated fashion, we see forward movement.
Generally, I want to point out that US and EU are the positive influences in the Western Balkans. That's a difference to all the other powers in the world who try to influence the Western Balkans. I would say even to exploit the Western Balkans, its people, its economy, and so on. The EU and the US have common values, common approach when it comes to very elementary questions like human dignity, individual freedom, rule of law, democracy. And both the EU and the US try to contribute positively to the Western Balkans. And of course, we need coordination. And in many, many different fields, coordination works very well. A good colleague and friend of mine once stated that Kosovo would be a baby, a child of the US and the EU, born and raised by both the US and the EU, but of course due to the European identity of all the 6 Western Balkan states, due to the fact that the citizens of the 6 Western Balkan states are clearly European citizens, EU has to remain the driving force in this field. And that's not only something the EU demands, I would say, that's also something where EU has to deliver. And many colleagues of me and myself, we always try to contribute to a EU which is quicker and clearer, more clarified than in the past, delivering what it has promised to the Western Balkan states.
Well, I think it can be improved. Coordination is important because we share a lot of interest with the Americans in the region. But, you know, I have said that publicly many times over the past weeks and months. I wish there would be more transparency on the side of our friends in America. as far as I am informed, and I have talked with Mr. Lajčák, the special envoy for this dialogue from the EU, that so far there has been no meeting, not even a virtual meeting, between Mr. Lajčák and Rick Grenell, who's the special envoy of the Americans. There is a standing invitation, but so far that has not become a reality. So my plea to both the European Union and more to the Americans is meet and talk, and we need transparency in what the Americans are doing, what Brussels is doing, because otherwise I think it would be extremely detrimental for the citizens of Kosovo and Serbia if these nations, so to speak, do not align their activities and each try to do their own stuff. That would not be a good approach for the benefit of the people in the region.
I feel really very strong friendship with Kosovo and its people. And I appreciate that today's leaders of Kosovo are clearly democratically legitimized, and the parliament was able to establish a new government only a few days ago without a swift re-election, a new election. That's very important, and that shows to the inside, to the own citizens of Kosovo, and to the outside, to the whole of Europe and the international community, stability. But I have to say, if Kosovo leaders want a positive future, it's important that they act and react constructively to each and everything that's done, or each and everybody who is appointed to do something in favor of a positive end of this dialogue process, of a mutual recognition, of course, which has to stand at the end of the process, and of visa liberalization. I also want to point out again, because it's important, I repeat it, that Kosovo will not become a next state of the United States of America. It will, hopefully, and we do what we can to achieve that, one of the member states of the European Union. And that's why I really ask, if I may, the Kosovo leaders to cooperate with Mr. Lajčák. I know the former decisions in the past of Mr. Lajčák. I had the opportunity to talk to him personally. I really pointed out that he is doomed to success because of his former decisions, which he has taken, we have to be frank on that, on behalf of the state of Slovakia, which is among the small minority of non-recognizing states when it comes to the Republic of Kosovo. Today, he is very clear that he knows he has to act on behalf of European Union, of the Europeans. The Europeans are represented by the European Parliament, and the decisions of the European Parliament are very clear on that. And there are many decisions like that. And that's why I really feel he's doomed to success. And I also pointed out towards himself, Mr. Lajčák, that all spots are pointed on him now, and everybody expects him to be what I would call an honest broker. And because of all this background, I guess he deserves at least a chance to be a good negotiator, a good mediator, and a really honest broker in this field.
You know, I just, look, any European will tell you that working with the EU and its institutions is complicated. It takes time, consensus building. That's a reality of doing diplomacy as the EU and with the EU. On the other hand, that type of cynicism or dismissive nature is not helpful, because after all, what are we talking about? We're talking about a pathway where Kosovo and Serbia will find themselves anchored within Europe and ultimately within the European Union. And so we just need to accept the reality that there is a degree of complexity in dealing with EU institutions and various authorities. But to take it for what it is, at the end of the day, this is the neighborhood, this is the home, this is the future for Kosovo and Serbia, and just deal with some of those. It requires a little bit of dexterity and diplomacy, but that's okay.
I would always argue that Mr. Lajčák, as I said, is a very professional diplomat. I mean, when he was the foreign minister of a country which does not recognize Kosovo, it was not his fault. I mean, it's not his responsibility, and he acted as this minister in this position. But nevertheless, now he is an EU representative, and he has many times repeated his position that he will, on behalf of the European Union, lead these negotiations. And I would really ask everyone to judge on his action and to judge on the results and to have a fair and give him some credit and to really see what might be the outcome and how do we gonna cooperate and how he can support Kosovo to lead this negotiation. Yesterday we had a very, very fruitful discussion in our foreign committee in the AFET, and we could all be convinced by his really ambitious goal to start the dialogue as soon as possible.
My heart is bleeding when I hear that there's the trust and confidence in the European Union is eroding. And you know, self-critically, I have to admit that over the past 2-3 years, the European Union did not play such a good and such a strong role in the political process as it should have done. I think actually the appointment of Miroslav Lajčák as special envoy is a very good overdue and positive sign. The mere creation of this position has been advocated by me personally a long time before, so I welcome that. I think it's a good step forward and a good sign that the European Union wants to engage more, play this role better than in the past 2 or 3 years. So everybody should, I think, have hope and perceive this as a very positive sign that the European Union is there and stronger than before. And so I think it is a constructive sign, and everybody should see it this way, I guess.
Look, I am, when I served in the U.S. government, even from the Atlantic Council perch, a strong believer that the EU member states, all of them, should have recognized Kosovo long ago, and that it was a false equivalence for countries like Slovakia or Spain not to proceed. I thought that was not helpful to having a unified European approach to this effort. That said, I've had the opportunity to work quite closely with Miroslav Lajčák over the years and had many opportunities to meet with Josip Borrell. These are diplomats with great experience and integrity who are clear-eyed about the challenges that we face in the world today, the challenges that stem from authoritarian regimes in Moscow and Beijing, and who have a track record of getting things done and being pragmatic. So I believe that with both of them in the helm, that we can make progress. I can understand if I were sitting in Kosovo, I'd be ambivalent, have some reservations about that. On the other hand, these should be the leaders, the voices that help convince the non-recognizing countries, including their own, that as part of this progress, as part of this dialogue, and as part of this deal, those EU member states must come on board. And so they're, on the one hand, perhaps couldn't be more effective people to bring the EU into a coherent position on this. But I do respect that their word needs to matter. And there have been some issues in the past where some commitments were not met. And I think that's going to be part of the test going forward, to have their word matter. But I'd rather them see this handicap, if you will, of coming from countries that don't recognize, become an asset where they become among the most effective spokespeople to help convince the non-recognizing EU member states to sign up and recognize Kosovo as part of this process.
Both Borrell and especially Lajčák, they are representing the whole European Union with all 27 member countries, with almost 500 million citizens. They are representing not their respective countries, Spain and Slovakia. They are representing the whole European Union. And I think they, especially Miroslav Lajčák, is doing his best, and he has, because I was addressing this concern myself, because it was on the table, and obviously he knew about these concerns, but he really convinced me that he wants to play a constructive engaged and honest role to do his job. And I think he's very qualified. He knows the region, and he has the best of intentions to serve the European Union and the people of Serbia and Kosovo, to bring them better together. That is actually what all have been waiting for years.
It sounds ironic, at least ironic, that these really two important mandates are held by citizens of countries which have not yet recognized Kosovo, and as we know, both of them, as well as the others, have not yet recognized Kosovo due to Kosovo issues, but to domestic issues. But the case that these two persons come from these countries does not necessarily mean that they would not be able to do a good job.
Well, I would argue the opposite. I would say they would have, and they should show an even bigger interest to convince the Kosovo, let's say, government, the people in Kosovo, the society, the NGOs, that they act on behalf of the interest of Kosovo. This would be my argument against this. And what I've heard, what I've seen is they were really so far not biased, but of course it is understandable that there is, let's say, a skeptic and that there might be a history, but I would really demand from everyone to put this aside and give them a chance, and to be constructive and actively involved in this upcoming weeks, in the next future, to participate as good as you can in the dialogue.
No territorial change, land swap, border correction. Please no. Germany, the federal government of Germany, with other representatives of Germany, I myself personally, we are very strong in that we will, not shake in our position, that we are totally against any kind of these territorial corrections or land swap, because we think it would be really dangerous. I understand that there is some temptation for one or the other in that, to find a supposedly quick deal kind of solution. But let there be no doubt that would not be a sustainable solution. And, drawing national borders along ethnic lines is something that hopefully in the middle of Europe should be a concept of the past. It will not solve problems. On the contrary, it will create new and really dangerous, for the region, dangerous problems. So we completely reject these methods or these concepts that some people are proposing.
So I think there are a couple principles here. One is that there's no clean ethno-territorial solution to anything. And the reality of the world, the reality of the countries of the region, is that all of these countries are going to have important minority voices that deserve real political rights and a voice in their countries. That all of the countries of the Western Balkans, to some degree, are going to be multi-ethnic states with minorities that need to be able to flourish in an open, democratic society that's meeting European and international standards for its citizens and its people. So that's the first point. The second point is that this has to be owned by the countries and the leaders themselves. We need to see what the leaders will come to the table and agree with, and we need to be prepared to back Kosovo and Serbia with what they're prepared to do, and understand that this, at the end of the day, has to be owned by the local voices for whom it matters the most.
Well, land swap is not an option at all. Territorial exchange, shifting borders, is not a solution at all. And we as Greens, but also mainly the majority in the German parliament, was always in favoring to stay in the borders we have, and to work on an agreement within the existing borders, for sure. Everything else will create a dangerous and unstable situation in the entire region, and we were always announcing this is not an option what anybody should lobbying for. So I would say the land swap issue, and also after the discussion yesterday in the AFET, I do not see any majority in the European Union, neither in the ESS, in the Foreign Service, nor in the Commission, nor in the Parliament, and also in the main capitals. I don't see anybody being in favor of this. When it comes to the Ahtisaari plan, and probably we will also speak about the, let's say, broader autonomy for Serbian communities, I have mentioned this in some of my interviews before, and I see this as one option, but only then when reciprocity is in place. As long as Serbia lobbies against any sovereignty in each international and European organization, there is no talk about the, let's say, broader or wider autonomy for Serbian communities. So for me, it is clear, as long as Serbia, and the foreign minister has claimed this yesterday and has emphasized it yesterday once again, that Serbia will not stop with their non-recognizing campaign, there is no room for this talk. So I think the reciprocity is a good instrument, and we should really stick to this. But this means to ask and to demand from Serbia to stop this non-recognizing campaign immediately, and then we could talk about the next step. But as long as they do, as they have done in the last weeks, I don't see there's a room for giving more from the Kosovo side.
I think the Ahtisaari plan was very well negotiated, very good elaborated. It's a complex plan which at least that time met all the challenges that were faced. By the way, it was negotiated in Vienna, the capital of my home country, Austria, but that's not the main point. The main point is there is the Republic of Kosovo. Its borders are presented in the flag of this republic, and the Republic of Kosovo has a very modern constitution, maybe one of the most modern constitutions in the world. Of course, as in each and every country, the constitution has to be effected in real life and in practice. That doesn't happen all the time in each and every respect in Kosovo. Neither does it happen in any other country in the world. We have to work on that. Kosovo has to work on that. But generally, the constitution explicitly points out the rights and the opportunities and the equal chances in society and in every field of the state for all the minorities. And that's more important than, that's the important point, rather more than to create new borders between so-called ethnical defined regions. The future will be a common Europe with many different ethnicities, religions, nationalities, but most of all a common Europe, which is a place which promises to its own citizens and to the world individual freedom, human dignity, rule of law and democracy, and that's something that should apply for each and everybody in the Western Balkans, people in Kosovo, people in Serbia, and in the other 4 states there.
This is not where we can go. We are not going to replicate a system that constipates or blocks, if you will, the ability to govern effectively and deliver for people's citizens. There's no pathway forward in a way that we should be replicating some of the dysfunctions that are plaguing Bosnia today to have them plague Kosovo. The exact opposite is the intention. The only way that we can unlock the potential of the people of Kosovo, and frankly of Serbia as well, is to resolve the disputes in a comprehensive settlement between Prishtina and Belgrade that allows these countries to move forward decisively with building their future. Right now, it becomes an easy excuse for political parties and others to be focused on the differences and the back and forth jousting with nationalist rhetoric and politicians across the border. This is not how you deliver for your people. We need to clear the underbrush, have a major deal here, which allows for a government in Kosovo, but also in Serbia, to be focused on growing the economy, delivering services for its constituents, and beginning to meet the standards for the European Union membership. This is what is really important, not to encumber Kosovo or anybody with dysfunctionalities that would import yet a more politically complex, more prone to corrupt influences. That cannot be the outcome of this process.
Well, I guess it must be figured out, and it's a very, very fine line, what kind of competences, what kind of sovereign things you can put to the community, and which, of course, needs to be fixed and kept on the national level. For sure, we have good and bad examples how a federal state can be organized, and we see Sweden has a wider range of autonomy for local communities, and Sweden is not a failed state. The same with Switzerland. So if you organize it in a proper way, that autonomy doesn't mean to create bigger influence from the Serbian state towards the Serbian community, I think this is fine, and it's necessary to figure this out and to create space for them. That's okay, but not in terms of really creating channels for a second power, for a second force, for another state to meddling into your own state issues.
Oh yeah, well, the so-called Association of Municipalities, or different terms for that, in the north of Kosovo, are one of the biggest problems, but also the solution of this problem is at the very core of the dialogue between both countries. I mean, as you know, in 2013, there has been this Brussels agreement, and already contained in this Brussels agreement of 2013, and also in an edition in 2015, that it has been mentioned as a demand by the international community, by the European Union, but so far, nothing has been implemented. And also, you have to keep in mind that there was a constitutional court decision in Kosovo saying that part of that would be unconstitutional in Kosovo. That is one of the most complicated things, but also at the same time, one of the most important things to normalize the situation between both countries. That there is yet another, I'm inclined to say, new government in Kosovo. So, they have a lot of tasks and challenges on the table, but one of their most important top priority tasks will be to relaunch the dialogue with Serbia and to attend to a solution in northern Kosovo. The European Union, and Germany being a member of the European Union, we are prepared, and we would welcome to play a role there if advice is needed and support in moderating a process. But nobody should dodge away from this thing only because it's complicated. There are so many issues, religion, ethnic belonging, and many other things involved in this thing, and they have to figure it out, and we try to support. But in the end, both have to make a decision there, and that's up to the governments in the end.
I have to point out, there are not Serbian municipalities and Albanian municipalities in Kosovo. There are only Kosovo municipalities. That's due to the constitution. That's due to the whole idea of this newly found republic. And that's something, no matter what ethnicity they are of, citizens of Kosovo can demand from the state, that they are treated and can live as Kosovo citizens, as citizens of the Republic of Kosovo, no matter whether they are Albanian, Serbian, Roma, Turkey, or of what ethnicity or religion ever. Freedom of religion, freedom of belief, and a constitution which provides to each and everybody the same rights seem important to me. And that's why each and every municipality in Kosovo should recognize itself as Kosovo municipality, no matter where the majority of people belongs to in this municipality. But still, I want to point out local work is important. I would never support anything like ethnical split, because in the past, in the last century, Europe has faced a lot of trouble, a lot of harm, a lot of crime, especially from Austrians, actually, from people of my home country 70, 80, 90 years ago, due to conflicts based on ethnicity, nationality, religion, and so on. We can provide a good example that this doesn't work, and that's why I really ask each and everybody to seek opportunities to live together positively.
Also due to the pandemic, to many travel restrictions, we lost a lot of time now. It looks very ambitious to me, and I'm not in favor of a quick deal. I'm more in favor, as you have mentioned, on a sustainable deal which lasts long, which has a broad majority, broad acceptance in the population, amongst the political actors, amongst all the stakeholders in the region. And I guess this is not so easy to receive than just having a deal on something. But of course, we are striking for, let's say, a very soon start of this dialogue, a resumption of this dialogue. But I wouldn't guess that it is possible to finish the entire agreement until the end of the year.
As already mentioned, I appreciate any constructive and positive influence from the United States if it's coordinated with us as Europeans and with the European Union. And I feel a strong partnership with the United States, also and especially in the Western Balkans, and especially with Kosovo issues. I would say quality is more important than time. And again, if I had to bet, my prediction would not be that it would go so fast.
I want an agreement as quickly as possible, but of course it better be sustainable. Of course it better be bigger and broader than any one individual on one side in Kosovo, Serbia, or for that matter here in the United States or with the European Union. This has been dragging on for quite a while. I've been really focused at a time when look at the stakes globally. The world is turned upside down. We've seen trends that really have underscored we're at an inflection point in history. We've seen an resurgence of authoritarian assertiveness. We've seen real challenges to some fundamental principles. And now you overlay this with a global pandemic, an economic recession, the likes of which we haven't seen since the Great Depression. And in many of our societies, mind first and foremost, civil unrest over equal rights and injustices. This is not a time to let Rome burn. This is a time to solve our problems, to take responsibility, and to get our work done. So I would love to have seen a deal on this last year, the year before. This could be the year to do it. There's no false deadline for me in that sense. I think time is of the essence to keep moving, because we need to be focused on building a European future, a common transatlantic future. I want to see the next phase of the relationship between the United States and Serbia, the United States and Kosovo, and they're in the European Union. So we need to see movement to catalyze, which could lead to an agreement as early as this year. But of course, it has to be sustainable. And it has to be sustainable first and foremost on the ground, but it also has to be sustainable here. Something that is not subject to just the term of one administration, but something that enjoys bipartisan support in this country as well. That's important to our policy of constructive American engagement in the region.
Well, on the one hand, I said start tomorrow, but that does not mean that pace is an element of quality. On the contrary, I mean, if it can be done by the end of the year, it would be fine. I would welcome this. But the negotiators should concentrate on the quality of what they are negotiating. Is it sustainable? Is this really a solution that could bring us further into the future, into the European Union? Is this something that was only negotiated, or not only formally negotiated, but just agreed to under pressure. That is not something that I would welcome. So if it takes until the end of this year or until the end of next year, I don't care so much. The negotiators have the responsibility to make quality negotiations, that it is really something that they really struggled for in a debate, in really tough negotiations, for the best compromise. It's always about compromises, right? For the best compromises for Kosovars and Serbs, and not for the White House, not for Brussels, but for themselves.
I guess it would not be acceptable, and it would also not be acceptable, and that's more important, frankly, than the international community. It would not be acceptable for the citizens of Kosovo or for the citizens of Serbia, because they deserve clear structures, clarity, positive relation, future opportunities for the youth, future opportunities for exchange on the one side, on the other side, and between people in Serbia and Kosovo. Future investments in order to create jobs, and future investments are, of course, also dependent on future EU membership, and they're also dependent on a functioning state, which also means rule of law and, of course, democracy. These are fields that matter to the citizens, and frankly, I'm very frank on that. As an Austrian, as a European, I'm very frank on the fact that the whole Serbia-Kosovo dialogue deals with conflicts from the past, related to religions, ethnicities, nationalities. These aspects are outdated. We have made our mistakes in the rest of Europe. I know that, and we have learned our lessons. So it's not only the Balkans where things like that are raised as important, but it was the rest of Europe as well. But in the last century, Europe has learned, and now we want to provide the lessons learned to all the citizens in the Western Balkans. And that's why it's so important that a legally binding result will be reached by the dialogue. The dialogue deals with outdated conflicts, and these conflicts are something the youth, future generations, have to struggle with, if not our generation can solve it. It's our generation who is more or less morally obliged to solve that. That's also why I feel obliged to contribute to it. And then after this legally binding agreement, then will come the real positive aspects, the constructive aspects for a future which we can look optimistically on regarding jobs, education, as already mentioned, all the factors that mean wealth and freedom for the people.
The reason for starting this dialogue is finally to have the agreement in our hands, because we want something for the long-lasting stability in the region. And for this, we need really a treaty or an agreement which is not just an agreement on certain or several criteria, while I do recognize that we need more, excuse me, that we need more in accordance to energy, to transport, communication, and all this, let's say, more technical criteria. We need more common statements on this, but this is definitely not enough. So we need a legally binding treaty in the end, and I guess on the European side, everyone does work for the success and for a successful outcome of this treaty.
Well, let's be clear. The dialogue shouldn't conclude without an agreement. The whole purpose here is not to just play diplomatic games and to do incrementalism. The purpose here is to have a comprehensive settlement, one that allows Kosovo to be a proud, normal country in the international community, and one that unlocks Serbia's potential to keep advancing its European and democratic aspirations. We need to see the best of both. We need this deal, they need this deal, and it needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to be final. That said, this doesn't happen in any one go. I understand from my European interlocutors that indeed the parties did make tremendous progress and were pretty close to some issues. This is not done until it's done, however. And so these can exist side by side. Incremental deals, outcomes that catalyze progress, keep forward momentum, but with our eyes remaining fixed on the prize, which is a comprehensive settlement. And so, yes, we will see interim announcements. We'll see economic announcements. We'll see progress on certain principles. That's a good thing. It's about building on confidence, building on momentum, building on agreements. But we aren't going to be satisfied with concluding this dialogue without a comprehensive settlement.
Well, as far as I've heard, the new Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo, Mr. Hoti, intends to nominate his negotiation team until next week, in the coming up days. That's what I've heard, and that's what I would appreciate. I completely understand that the newly elected Serbian parliament will appoint their negotiation team then. And as soon as these negotiation teams will be in place, negotiations have to start in a constructive atmosphere and in the atmosphere of a positive will, of goodwill to reach an agreement. And that's something that will last for the summer, maybe for fall, and maybe in fall we will have the first opportunity to have a look on also Mr. Lajčák's work. When I've said we have to give him a chance, that doesn't mean that in fall we will see only positive aspects of his work. As far as we can analyze that now, I guess he has started very well. He talks to each and everybody on each and every side. He's ready to start. That's also something he has stated towards me and my colleagues in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. And that's what we will have to follow. And I really also expect the citizens of Kosovo and Serbia to follow this process, because the process has to serve them. All of this is not a game politicians play. It's something that should be a service to the people. And I can understand that for many citizens, after years and years, things become a little boring. But that's always dangerous. Citizens themselves, civil society, people have to follow the process, because then they can push their elected officials to do it the right way. And that's something I would say I would recommend to the citizens of both countries, Serbia and Kosovo.
Well, I've heard from all sides, from our side, but also from both of the state side, that both governments are ready to start the dialogue. Prime Minister Hoti has even yesterday repeatedly said that he does build up his negotiation team. He will be, I understood, the main negotiator himself, which is good, of course, put it on the head of the government. And so this is a good signal. And what I understood, that Mr. Lajčák would start as soon as possible. And I hope that we can really enter the crucial phase of this negotiations.
Take up your responsibility for the citizens of your country and for the future in the European Union. If you seriously want a future in the European Union, Serbia and Kosovo, start tomorrow, because that is the very prerequisite for any further political process accession in the European Union. And one remark in that regard as well: we have talked about Europe, Germany, and the Americans during this interview, which is correct. But we should also not forget about other influences there, like China and Turkey, Saudi Arabia. And so time is of the essence. Again, no luxury of wasting any more time.
I do think it's important to have the long view. The United States is not any one person. It's not any one diplomat. The United States has a deep, abiding commitment and recent history of engagement in this region. We were going to succeed in supporting the aspirations of the people of Kosovo and Serbia in a partnership with the European Union that helps ensure that there is economic growth and development so people don't have to flee their towns and villages to go get jobs elsewhere, that there's a sense of security, that there's never any doubt about their personal safety because of politics, and that there's a perspective that these countries are on the pathway to be part of our family, part of the European Union, and for those who opt for it, part of the transatlantic community. And so I would just ask that anybody in Kosovo understand that the United States' interest and commitment to the region and to Kosovo in particular are deep, they're profound, and they're bipartisan. And so not to be blinded by tough diplomatic rancor or public spats to take the eyes off the fact that we are a big country with a broad set of actors and decision makers. So I do understand some concerns and skepticism of what's played out and the harshness of some of the back and forth rhetoric. That's not my style. But I do think it would be short-sighted to project that onto skepticism of the United States and its role in the region. The United States has the ability to be an incredible partner with the European Union and to be effective working with our friends and allies and ensuring that the Western Balkans is not left out of the story of a Europe whole and free, but is a fundamentally important chapter, next chapter in completing Europe and completing a Europe whole and free.